Today on True Crime Chronicles, she was an Army private with a promising future until she vanished. The tragic events that followed would send shockwaves throughout the entire U.S. military. And later, a charismatic entrepreneur is brutally murdered in the prime of his life. His on-again, off-again girlfriend is arrested for the crime. Her trial captivates a nation.
Welcome to DBL's True Crime Chronicles. I'm Sam Shocker. Serving in the military is supposed to be the great equalizer. No matter who you are or where you come from, the moment you enlist and put on that uniform, you're just like everyone else. But there are bad actors everywhere, and the armed forces are no exception, as the harassment and murder of Army Private Vanessa Guillen can tragically attest to.
On June 30th, 2020, human remains are found buried alongside the Leon River in Bell County, Texas. 68 days after her disappearance, the search is over. 20-year-old United States Army Private Vanessa Guillen has finally been found. The young woman, whose interests included weightlifting and soccer, would become a small arms repair soldier at Fort Hood in her home state of Texas, the largest active-duty armored military base in the country. Guillen was last seen around 1 p.m. on April 22, 2020, in the parking lot of her unit. Her car keys, identification, bank card, and barracks key were all found inside the armory where she worked. The following day, when she still hadn't reported to her barracks and all attempts at contacting her failed, she was officially reported missing and an investigation was opened. This prompted a massive search by Fort Hood, local authorities, family, friends, and volunteers. Within days of her disappearance, Vanessa's family told investigators she had confided in them that a superior officer had walked into her bathroom and watched her shower, but she was too scared to report it.
Investigations have revealed the Army specialist was also sexually harassed by a sergeant in the months before her death, but ignored by her chain of command.
Vanessa's story caught the attention of celebrities, the general public, and even members of Congress.
Justice is needed for Vanessa and for the many service members facing an epidemic of sexual harassment and assault in our armed forces, too often in the shadows.
In early June, with Vanessa missing for more than a month, Guillen's mother publicly stated that she did not trust the Army's handling of the investigation. Juan Cruz, Vanessa's fiancé.
Sometimes when I wake up, I'll be like, this is reality. She's no longer here. I'm always thinking about her.
On June 13th, hundreds of protesters amassed outside of Fort Hood in response to the lack of information and demanded action. Major General Scott Eflont addressed the public.
We, as an Army, failed to protect Specialist Guillen.
Shortly after this, the Army Criminal Investigation Division reported that they found no evidence that Guillen was assaulted, but said they believed foul play was involved in her disappearance. Vanessa's loved ones found this difficult to believe and asked for an independent investigation. Investigators believe that the remains were originally buried under concrete, which is why they had gone undetected, but had since been dug up by local wildlife. Back at Fort Hood, a junior enlisted soldier by the name of Aaron David Robinson had previously been placed in unarmed custody in connection with the disappearance of Vanessa Guillen. Upon hearing of the discovery of Vanessa's remains, Robinson escaped and fled Fort Hood. Early the following morning, after being tracked down and confronted by police and federal marshals, Aaron Robinson pulled out a gun and killed himself.
Aaron Robinson was first interviewed by investigators 6 days after Vanessa Guillen's disappearance. His girlfriend was interviewed twice, first on June 19th and again on June 30th, when she admitted to helping Robinson dispose of Vanessa's body. The story continues when DBL's True Crime Chronicles returns. U.S. Army Private Vanessa Guillen's remains were found by a river 25 miles from where she was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. Less than 24 hours later, another soldier from the same base who had been questioned in her disappearance committed suicide. But this was far from the end of this story.
It comes out that Aaron beat Vanessa to death with a hammer in an armory at Fort Hood. He then placed her body in a large box and met up with Cecily. They dismembered the body with an axe. They then tried to burn it. But when this was not successful, they placed Vanessa's remains in concrete and buried them. Although Vanessa's family named Robinson as one of the soldiers who harassed her, the Army said they found no proof of this. However, Robinson had been accused of sexually harassing another female soldier a year earlier. By mid-July of 2020, the Army said it interviewed more than 300 people as part of its investigation and found nothing to support the claim that Vanessa Guillen had been sexually harassed. Everyone connected to the story had more questions than answers, as reflected by the attention that was still being given at the time by the national media.
We're joined by reporter Grace White from KHOU in Houston, Texas. Thank you so much for joining us, Grace. Investigators say Army Specialist Aaron Robinson murdered Vanessa, but then he took his own life. His girlfriend was taken into custody. So what happens now, Grace?
That's what's so tough about this case. Because the main suspect is dead, we may truly never know what happened to Vanessa Guillen. Certainly, we know that as police were closing in, though, this suspect, Aaron Robinson, shot and killed himself. But we have learned a lot from his girlfriend, Cecily Aguilar. She's now in police custody and has confessed to helping bury Vanessa Guillen's body in a shallow grave roughly 30 miles from Fort Hood. We're hoping to learn more about the motive from her upcoming court appearances, but still a lot of unanswered questions.
So many things that we don't know, but we're focusing in on what we do know. And we know that Vanessa went missing in April. Her body was found June 30th. Many are saying the Army didn't properly handle the case, and now dozens of lawmakers are demanding a separate investigation. So where does that stand?
There's now close to 100 members of Congress that have called for this independent investigation into Vanessa's murder and her disappearance from Fort Hood. They want to know who knew what when. And the reason they're so frustrated, we've now learned from court documents just 6 days after Vanessa went missing, Army investigators were actually interviewing Aaron Robinson, the suspect in all of this. But it wasn't until 2 months later everything really started to progress, when her family took their demand for answers to the media.
Wow, they had to advocate for their own daughter. Well, this is interesting, too. The family told investigators Vanessa had actually been sexually harassed at Fort Hood, but was too scared to report it. This has sparked the hashtag #IamVanessaGuillen. How has it encouraged people to go public?
It was actually her sister, Vanessa's sister, that started this hashtag #IamVanessaGuillen. We've now seen it trending worldwide. Her sister told us she wanted other young women who may be in her sister's shoes to feel comfortable going forward, to have a place where their stories, their messages could be heard. And we've certainly seen people touched by the story across the country.
Thank you so much, Grace. To read more on the case, please visit khou.com.
Murals and memorials across Houston may not bring Vanessa back, but as with the act before Congress, they serve as reminders that the fight for justice for all victims will never end.
Vanessa Guillen's story continues to captivate the nation. During a press conference at the Pentagon, Secretary Ryan McCarthy said, "Guillen's murder forced us to take a critical look at our systems, our policies, and ourselves." In 2020, Vanessa Guillen was posthumously promoted from private first class to the rank of specialist. We'll be right back with more of DBL's True Crime Chronicles. Welcome back. Two people drawn together by an intense sexual attraction in an otherwise toxic relationship, a situation few would expect to have a happy ending. But in the case of Travis Alexander and Jodi Arias, it led to a crime so brutal that a nation became glued to the trial and transfixed by the killer.
29-year-old salesman and motivational speaker Travis Alexander meets 26-year-old aspiring artist and photographer Jodi Arias at a conference for the multi-level marketing company they both work for in Las Vegas, Nevada, in September of 2006. The two are instantly attracted to each other and begin an intense, though largely long-distance relationship. Alexander is a devout Mormon and active in his church. Arias knows this jeopardizes their relationship since the very sexual and premarital nature of it goes against the teachings of his faith. So in November of 2006, she converts to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and becomes a Mormon herself. But after several volatile months, the couple breaks up in June of 2007. However, they still see each other for sexual encounters, and not long after the breakup, Arias leaves her home in Palm Desert, California, and moves to Mesa, Arizona, where Travis lives. But by April 2008, Jodi Arias has seemingly given up on any permanent reconciliation with him and is now living with her grandparents in Yreka, California. Jodi's supporters, in turn, believed Travis was only using her for sex, knowing full well it would never be anything more for him, but continued to lead her on. On June 2, 2008, Jodi Arias rents a car in Redding and visits friends in Southern California on her way to a work conference in Salt Lake City. Jodi meets up with a coworker in a suburb of Salt Lake City on June 5th. This person would later say that Arias's formerly blonde hair was now dark brown and she had cuts on her hands. On June 9th, after being unable to reach him for days, Travis Alexander's friends make their way into his home and find him dead in the shower. A coroner's report would later determine that Alexander was stabbed as many as 29 times, his throat had been cut, and he'd been shot in the head. The coroner would also determine that Alexander's murder occurred 5 days earlier, on June 4th. Police searching Alexander's home discover a digital camera containing multiple photos of Alexander and Jodi Arias in sexually explicit positions, followed by a photo of Alexander taking a shower and one final shot of him bleeding profusely on the floor. They also find a bloody palm print containing DNA from both the victim and Jodi Arias. On July 9th, Arias is indicted by a Maricopa County grand jury for the first-degree murder of Travis Alexander. Arias claims that she wasn't in Mesa at the time of the murder and hadn't even seen Travis Alexander since March of 2008. But when confronted with evidence that disputes this, Arias changes her story and claims that she was with Alexander at the time, but that two intruders dressed like ninjas broke into the home, attacking her and murdering him. She eventually admitted to murdering Travis, but claimed it was in self-defense. After years of legal maneuvering on all sides, the trial of Jodi Arias finally gets underway on January 2nd, 2013. And by then, it is far from clear what the outcome will be.
This story of sex and murder, combining Arias' looks and dueling personas of femme fatale or victim, along with the long wait for the trial, captures the attention of the public and the media. More when DBL's True Crime Chronicles continues. almost 5 years after the murder of Travis Alexander in January of 2013, the trial of Jodi Arias is underway in Maricopa County, Arizona. And ultimately, it's Arias herself who polarizes everyone even more than the eventual verdict.
A total of 38 witnesses are called over the course of the 4-month trial, including Arias herself, who spends 18 days on the witness stand. She sticks to her self-defense story. But the prosecution counters with a large amount of evidence showing that Travis Alexander's murder was cold, calculated, and premeditated. On the last day of the trial, the defense brings in clinical psychologist Dr. Robert Geffner, who claims Arias suffers from PTSD caused directly by Travis Alexander's abusive treatment. And that explains not only the murder itself, but all of her behavior, including lying to the police since then. On May 8th, the jury returns with its verdict. But the jury is hung on the death sentence. On April 13th, Judge Sherry Steffens sentences Arias to life with parole. Whether justice was served on that day in 2015 continues to be a subject of debate, as seen in this contentious interview with Robert Geffner 6 years after the initial verdict.
You were called in on the last day of the trial by the defense. This was a huge case in the news. A majority of people already believe she was guilty, as Jodi herself admitted, and not a victim of PTSD. So what was that pressure like to defend Jodi?
My main role in that last day that you mentioned was really to explain to the jury how the prosecutor's expert, and I use that word loosely, completely screwed up the testing that they gave, misinterpreted her own results, gave outdated, obsolete information, and that her results were more consistent with trauma and PTSD than what she had said.
Yeah, and you know, I did cover this trial for HLN, so I do remember when you came in on that second trial during her sentencing trial. Here's the thing, and I'm going to push back here.
Okay.
You believe that she suffered from PTSD. Now, you also believe that she was not a liar, right? If I remember correctly, during your testimony, when Jodi lied over and over and over again to the police, number one, about her whereabouts, when people first questioned her about her role in the, I'm going to call it a triple murder of Travis Alexander.
So the first thing about the lying is they used a test to say she lied on it, and her results on that test indicated she had not. Her test results given by the prosecutor's expert and the other experts in the case who had worked with her, they were consistent with trauma. That was what I said. They weren't consistent with somebody who was psychopathic or somebody who was borderline, which is what they were arguing.
My curiosity is more about the nature of your relationship with Jodi, because obviously we, the public, don't know her on an interpersonal level, right, but you do. So what was it about Jodi that, one, has you believing her when so many people do not believe her story? And how did you go about coming to your findings in terms of if she was a credible person to support or not?
It wasn't a question of believing Jodi or not believing Jodi. I mean, when we deal with these cases, credibility of a person is always at question, which is why we do a whole variety of different tests and questionnaires. She passed almost all those things. There is no doubt that she lied at the beginning, that she made up stories. Unfortunately, those things did not help her at all.
Dr. Geffner, listen, I'm just really uncomfortable considering I'm always going to be one to stick up for someone that is a victim of abuse. And I really appreciate you taking that role. And I know that you're sticking your neck out and your career out by doing that. But I also think it's important to note to our viewers who are not familiar with this case, yes, you may have interviewed people that felt like that she was a victim of abuse, but then there's also other people that have said that she was 100%, in so many words, psychotic, charismatic. So I just want to, not discrediting anything that you're saying, and I really appreciate you coming on the phone, on our show and presenting this side. But I also want to make sure that our viewers watching, and also Travis Alexander's family and Travis Alexander's legacy, I mean, he can't defend himself. I think it's important to note when you say those things for me to push back and also let our viewers know that she also did some very questionable things that raised a lot of red flags, not only with Travis Alexander, but his family and his friends.
Wait a minute. Now, you've pushed back. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But let me do the same. So one of the things you need to look at is not what the people are saying at the trial. It's what they said prior to the trial. Now, the people you talked about who testified at the trial changed their stories. One of them actually warned Jodi about the manipulation and the problems with Travis.
And many later, of Travis's friends warned him about the manipulation of Jodi. Considering the heinousness of the crime, considering all these nuanced details, we don't have enough time to cover it all. I wish that we could have you on longer, Dr. Geffner, and I really do appreciate you going back and forth with me. And to hear more from Dr. Geffner, you can watch the 2-hour documentary, If I Can't Have You, the Jodi Arias story. Dr. Geffner, thank you for being here.
As of 2021, Jodi Arias is housed at the Arizona State Prison in Perryville in a medium security unit.
In addition to spending the rest of her life in jail, Jodi Arias was ordered to pay $32,000 in restitution to the siblings of Travis Alexander, which her attorney made sure to point out was about a third of what she was sued for. Arias continues to maintain her innocence. Thank you for watching. I'm Sam Shocker for DBL's True Crime Chronicles.